So as I alluded to already, California actually met its AB 32 plan, Assembly Bill 32, which had specific targets of reducing emissions with respect to the 1990 level. By 2016, they had already reached that target, and we are already in 2020, and the emissions didn't spike in 2017 to 2020 thus far. So look likely that they exceeded the targets set. So here is the historical emissions which were on their way up and maybe reducing here, and those are the reference. And then the Senate Bill 32 came and took it further to reduce 40% below 1990, and they aim to reach zero emissions from electricity, I think, by 2045, and 80% below 90 the statewide greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Very, very ambitious goals, and hopefully they will continue to lead by example. As we will see later on, there is something called the California effect, which means many other states are beginning to follow the success story of climate action over California to motivate their own local actions as well, which is always a good thing, because remember, even at an individual level, we said peer pressure works. So this is the planned sources of emission reductions in California's first climate change scoping plan. The reductions are those counted toward the 2020 target. Values indicate million metric tons carbon CO2 equivalent. So you convert other greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide and so on, HFCs, into CO2 equivalents. Okay, just look quickly at the various sources covered here. Oil and gas extraction and transmission. That's very critical. So that's the life cycle analysis that is really needed. Landfill methane capture. That's very important. Light duty vehicle efficiency. So the reductions are these numbers shown here are in million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. Light duty vehicle efficiency, that's a huge chunk of the pie of greenhouse gas emissions, and you can see transportation, the blue colors in general, cover basically majority of it, other than what is dealt with here in cap and trade and energy efficiency, renewable portfolio, and other high green global warming potential gases like HFCs. Okay, forests are included. So renewables, already California has added plenty of renewable sources to its portfolio. Low carbon fuel standards, and they admit that this is a very stubborn piece of the pie to reduce emissions, the transportation sector. So maybe Elon Musk will bring his hyperloop and change this game quite a bit. He's a crazy guy, but actually can deliver on his crazy ideas most of the time. Additional reductions from cap and trade, industrial measures, high-speed rail, which is one of the important parts, especially if it runs all the way from San Francisco to LA and cuts travel time and reduces flights, right? The high-speed rail is going to be much, much more friendly in terms of emission reductions than flying. Solar roofs, goods movement, so that's the goods transportation, vehicle efficiency, and regional transportation. Land use change. Land use change remains another complicated issue because of the peculiarity of the way things are run. State doesn't have control on local land use, land change. So these are annual greenhouse gas emissions, again in million metric ton CO2 equivalent. California emission trends and targets. So you can see that the figure we saw before with a little bit more of information here. The 2020 target was up here. It was already met in 2016, as I said. This is the reference scenario or the business as usual where you don't implement any of these things. Okay, these are the scoping issues. The scoping plan considered all these, but if you don't implement those, then you are going to go quickly back up to beyond the 1990 level. Okay, so going back to 1990 reference period is already good. That's where we became keenly aware of our impact on global warming. So the targets set here, 2030, 260 million metric tons. So you're going from more than 400 in 1990 to 260, and by 2050 you're going to be reducing it by more than 50%, right? Well, you're going to be way below half of what it was in 1990. So the successors to AB 32, Assembly Bill 32 of 2006, have been aiming at various things, and there was an attempt to remove this, I think way back when, I don't remember, voting pattern to suspend AB 32. There was an effort to suspend the Assembly Bill 32. Colors indicate the percentage in each county voting yes on Proposition 23, which would remove AB 32, which would have suspended and effectively repealed AB 32. Okay, note that the support for suspension was strongest in the more remote northern and mountainous counties and was weakest on the coast, including cities such as San Francisco and LA. Well, that's not surprising in the sense the socioeconomic groups that occupy the regions where the voting was high. Okay, so this is more than 50. So be aware of the colors. These are very low support along the coast, and the support increases as you go inland because of these remote mountainous regions where it's not the liberal rich crowd, but it's the more regular crowd. And the role played by vested interests like energy companies and auto industry is quite heavy, influential in these patterns as well. Anti-Proposition 23 campaign rally. The No campaign against AB 32 suspension focused on the fact that the initiative was backed by out-of-state oil companies such as Valero. As I said, companies with vested interest will do everything they can to motivate people to repeal AB 32 or other climate action, right? The rally took place at UC Santa Barbara, and in general, you expect that students tend to be more forward-looking, progressive, wanting climate action, and so on, which is a good thing, right? So you can see that California is not all blue. There is plenty of red within it, but overall it turns out to be blue in terms of picking climate-friendly legislation, supporting climate action, etc.